Today is Tuesday, December 15th. It is 6:02 p.m. and we're called to order supplemental budget hearing and public comment. I don't believe we received any public comment. So we'll go right into the resolutions and have Paula introduce those.
Yeah, I'm mostly going to have a Mark go through it. But as you recall, we had discussed the possibility of doing the load centers all at once instead in 3 years, which require a bit more money than we have originally budgeted for. And with that, we put out an IFP. We got some quotes. We made a selection, which will be coming up later as part of this commission meeting. And in order to do so, we talk about possibly borrowing from ourselves through the NOAA restricted funds. And what that does is it allows us to basically pay ourselves within 3 or 4 years. And then in order to do so, we had enough funds in our budget, but because the way this was built after Mark did additional research, apparently we have to go through this process in order to borrow from that fund in particular. And with that, I'll let Mark get into the details.
Yeah, anytime you're on a particular fund that you're reappropriating more than 10%, you have to have a supplemental budget. And that's what we're doing in this case. Additionally, we're taking, there's certain legal requirements around an unappropriated ending balance, which it has to be a situation that no one could have anticipated, which we didn't anticipate this at the time that we created the budget. So therefore it becomes a supplemental budget on it. You will notice that we transferred $1 million. We set the budget up for $1 million transfer. We don't anticipate needing that, but we want to avoid having a second budget hearing. As you'll see in the regular meeting, it's around 700,000, I believe, that we end up needing.
Any questions for Mark or Paula? Okay, we more or less went over this last meeting. Entertain a motion. Anyone?
The motion would be to adopt the resolution 2020- whatever it's going to be, and actually accept the two resolutions, one to adopt the supplemental budget, a second one to adopt the interfund loan.
Okay, I'll do the first one. Do we have a number for it, Mark?
Karen, do you have a number for that one?
Yes, the next resolution that's passed should be 2020-13.
Okay, I move that we pass resolution 2020-13 adopting supplemental budget for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 and authorizing the transfer of funds.
I'll second that. Oh, I beat you to it, Jeff. Sorry.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Resolution 2020-14. We have a motion on that
I
one.
wanted for clarification. I believe Walter stated and authorized the transfer of funds. So I don't know if you want to combine them in one motion or separate them.
Well, that was what 13 was for, was to authorize the transfer. The next one is to authorize the loan. 14 would be the loan.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
I move that we adopt resolution 2020-14, a resolution authorizing the interfund loan.
I second it.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Okay, do we have any changes to the regular meeting agenda? I did not see any. Jeff?
Yeah, I just wondered if we could take the financial reports out and just take them out of the consent calendar, or is that where we would?
Or any changes to the consent calendar then? There's one more public comment. I don't think we have any comments, so changes to the consent calendar. Want to pull the financials out, Jeff?
Yes, please.
Okay, do we want to approve the consent calendar minus the financials?
I move that we approve the consent calendar with removal of subject C.
Second.
Financial reports. Yeah, thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Okay, old business, items removed from the consent calendar. So financials?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Should I go?
Yes, please, Jeff.
Okay. So I was just kind of working through here. Excuse me. Just trying to make sure I sort of keep up sort of my understanding of kind of where we're at port finances wise. And I thought I'd just point something out that I was trying to get a handle on. Page 21. Line 100. 3.8 million.
Yep.
General, basically liquid checking and savings. I was just trying to get, I called Paula and talked with Paula and Mark, just trying to make sure I understood exactly sort of where we're at with that and where funds are going to be used or not used here coming up within this budget and beyond. And I thought it'd just be good for us to, as commissioners and as staff, just to keep an eye on these numbers as we progress during this budget and next. And I know the budget for the next fiscal year is being worked on, but we're in a good place with our cash reserves. And I know we have there's several things that are coming up, and I thought it'd just be worth pointing out to other commissioners and maybe the way Mark and Paula explained to me so that I was kind of up to speed, the cash reserves that are there on page 21 and then also on page 37 with the facilities maintenance reserve fund, sort of two places that are sort of, I guess would be the liquid funds for what we are doing. And then the 1.2 million that we want to make sure we have in reserves out of that. So, but I'll just stop talking. I thought I'd just see if we could just talk that out and ask either Paul or Mark, if you could maybe just give a quick thumbnail of what you explained to me, kind of where we're at with the funds and what we see for the rest of the fiscal year.
The only thing I'm going to point out here, Jeff, and as a reminder that the financials that Mark put out, it's usually a point in time. So it's what we're working with right now. So it doesn't include the entire budget for the year. So with that, I'll let Mark talk a bit more about some of those funds. And I mean, we go through those on a regular basis, making sure that where we are. And that's one of the reasons why we even had to do the supplemental, is to make sure since it was not included, even though there are some funds that we most likely won't spend on this budget year, even though we budget for, but that's usually how it goes with ports, you know, you got to budget in order to do it. If you don't, we move on to the next year. But with that said, Mark, do you have anything else to add?
Well, yeah, this, you hit it right in the point. This is as of November 30th, 2020. We have $3.847 million in our checking account. That's for general operating fund. That doesn't include the maintenance fund. That doesn't include the capital fund. That's only general operating funds. Last year we had 4 million. So we dropped $187,000. When you consider we spent $250,000 cash out of the sinkhole, to be down $187,000 is pretty good. So that'd be an indicator right there. You can see accounts receivable is up slightly, up 16%. But again, what are we doing right now? We're getting ready for crab season. So I would expect it to start rising as we go forward. Just looking at the numbers, accrued interest, long-term portion of debt, lodging. So, you know, on here, if you look at liabilities, you're going to see things like lodging and room tax payable, payroll liabilities, deferred revenue, and current portion of long-term debt. Those are things we're going to have to pay within the next year. So they're under current liabilities. That's how you differentiate current between long-term. Yes, Paula.
If I may also add, if you recall in the beginning of the year, we actually were looking quite good. I think we had almost $300,000 on the black there. So we're doing quite well. And then COVID hit. And then we had to also deal with that sinkhole, as Mark indicated. And then we had a couple emergencies, one with a crane out at the international terminal, and then the other one with the, we didn't spend too much, but we had to spend some money with the bilge waste. So there were a few things that wasn't expected, that was not budgeted for, that we end up having to do. And then on top of it, with some of the initial losses that we had in the beginning of the year with COVID. So we actually should have been sitting quite well right now, but because of some of those things, it kind of set us back. But I think it seems like we still may end up finishing the year up in a good place, you know, in spite of everything. So only imagine if those things haven't happened, you know, but that's why we have the contingencies, you know, it's exactly for those type of things.
Yep. And, you know, the caveat on this, of course, is that we know we're going to spend about 1.2 million for the pier. So we know that too. It's coming up. If everything goes well, we'll do it before while the in-water season is in. If not, then Aaron may have to move it back. But that's beyond me. That's Aaron. I just keep watching the cash and make sure we have it. So a few years ago, Aaron made a deal with the commercial fishermen that we would set aside money each year for the electrical on Port Dock 5. If you go to I think that's the one Jeff was referring to, page 36.
37 or 36?
7. That's where you're going to see those funds. On page 37, most of the money in here is set aside for that electrical work. Just earlier this week, I calculated the increase for this past year, and we added another 100,000 to this account. based on the 10% increase last year.
Yeah, and this year we are doing the engineering work with the design, and I confirm it with Aaron that indeed next year is when we're intending to go out for bid to get the contractor to actually do the work after the design is completed. So you will see the remainder of this work on the budget for this coming year.
And you're going to see in this account under the equity section, you're going to see that it's assigned for port dock electrical work. We're going to break this equity section in here so you really know what the money's for in the future. I've talked to Mark Harris, our accounting supervisor, earlier this week, and we're going to get that set up for you. So it'll make it clearer. Based on what Jeff and I and Paula discussed the other day. It was a good idea.
Looks like Gil had a question.
Well, my question was to Jeff. I just wanted to make sure I understood what his concern was looking at these numbers. And, you know, I'm assuming you're kind of comparing it to past experience and reading these and seeing something there that got you slightly worried. Was that the case? Were you worried about something? Or you just
No.
didn't understand what was happening with these dollars and how they were being accounted for in these balances?
No, I think I said I didn't really I didn't really express myself real well setting it up. Mainly, I just spent some time going through these numbers, and I actually think I think they really reflect that the port's really done well in a COVID year, and I think we're set up pretty well, and we have some good reserves, and I think the results and the financials are really good. And I just wanted other commissioners to have the benefit of just sort of the conversation and clarity I got from Paula the other day and Mark. It was real helpful to me. And I kind of came back to the two numbers at the top of page 21 and then the 3.84 million. And then on page 37, the money there that's being reserved. And that really helped me think about sort of, okay, those are the two numbers that are going to feed the projects we're doing. And as commissioners, it's good to have in my head, okay, what are those numbers? And then what's going to be coming out of those numbers, like the 1.2 million or future electrical work. And so basically, I just wanted everybody to have the benefit of kind of seeing that and hearing that. The explanation I got from Paul and Mark was very good. So I kind of set that up poorly, but I think what they explained now, 3.8 million, I think it's pretty good considering what we've been through the past 4 years. And I think Paul and Mark, the way they explained it to me, they kind of have, they have everything mapped out in their thinking and mathematically, and just wanted y'all to have the benefit of that as well.
Okay, good. That's a good explanation. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Because a lot of times we don't talk about the really the financials, how it's playing, what's coming out of what and how it works all together. So for me, it's a big deal. So this is nice for me. So thank you.
I just want to say that, and it used to be that the finance director used to go through every single item, and so did the director of operations, and the meetings were stretching quite long. So we kind of decided to make this simplify a little bit and highlight any points where we figured that it's been some change or she should watch out for this or that. But just keep in mind that that's one of the reasons that Mark and Aaron, still come to these meetings. They're the people behind some of those things. So if you ever have any specific questions that I didn't point out, and I don't talk about it, they're always here for you to ask questions if I cannot answer them directly. So don't feel like the fact that I'm usually the one mostly talking about, the director's report, that you cannot ask questions to them. That's what they're here for. And I'm sure they'll be delighted to answer all your questions. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Paula.
Great. Okay. Any questions on the accounts paid? I guess I have not really a question, just a comment. I see that we have a new AED for commercial marina. I was just curious about how many people are trained to use it over there.
Aaron, yeah.
Yeah, I'm unmuting and getting my video online here.
All right, thank you.
We still are due to do our annual training for first aid CPR, which includes AED training. So
Right.
the last time that we did it, I don't think any of the folks that we had on board, except for Kent, and that's it. We're here, so we're still due for it.
Okay, just curious, saw that on there. I don't have any more questions on that. Anyone want to make a motion to approve accounts paid?
So moved.
Okay.
I second it.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Page 53. Resolution 2020-15 approving application for a loan from Business Oregon for the administration building.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I had to start the process with the loan if we want to eventually get a loan for this project with Business Oregon. I had originally sent out a pre-application, which I could have just done it myself without any approvals, just basically reaching out to them and say, hey, I have this project. You know, would you be interested in providing us a loan? And basically what they do is they go through their process and decide, oh yeah, this is a good project. And then they send a form and as well as a letter. And usually that letter goes to the president of the board, even though they send it to me, saying, yes, you're welcome to apply. So that means the project looks good. Now we need a bit more details, which is the whole laundry list of documentation. As I mentioned before, this may take 2 to 3 months to get through. So I know we're still going through the process and we're going to be going out eventually for a bid for contractors to see if the pricing comes up to what we're expecting. But should we decide to move forward, at least we'll have the loan moving forward. If not, we can always withdraw. There is $100 pre-application process, which Business Oregon's talking about just getting rid of because it's an old thing they had. And but other than that, there's, they understand that, obviously they don't want to go through a whole bunch of work and then having to pull out. But if that's what we go through, that's it. So with that, I would like to ask you for the approval allow me to start the process and sign that loan application, because it either has to be signed by the commission president or by a designated person.
Gil?
Yeah, before we do that, I just have a couple questions. So Business Oregon is a state agency, so they do loans for certain state projects, is that? And they're relatively low interest loans and they have to go in front of a board and they have to be relatively high priority. Is that what you're telling us? And the interest rates are lower than commercial banks? Is that what you're also telling us?
Absolutely. We, Mark and I both have done our research, and we even look at with the USDA. USDA had some low interest, but the problem with the USDA is that you either do a 10-year loan or you do a 30-year loan, or I can't remember what it was, but it's not something that we really want to do. And we also check with SDAO, who has access to a few commercial bankers that usually have low interest. There was some interesting stuff there too, but the terms weren't good for us. And then we also check with Business Oregon. Business Oregon, they have a couple different accounts. One that is basically for all public entities that want to borrow with them, and you got to show them how you're paying for and so on and so forth. Or they actually have a port revolving loan that it's designated. There's some funds that they go to the legislation every year and pull out a few $1 million and put into the account where ports can borrow for their own projects too. In either case, the interest rates are quite low in comparison to commercial bankers, and that's what we're looking to do.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that explanation.
Okay. We have a motion for that.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Kelly.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2020-15, authorizing an application for a business Oregon loan for the new administrative buildings. And should I say by Paula, or does that work?
I think so. That sounds
That's
good.
actually the resolution. That's in the resolution.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm sorry to say this, but I think we jump one of the resolutions that it was for the computer policy. So this one would be 2016.
Oh,
Do you want-
Oh, right.
Are we fine?
Sorry.
Do you want me to restate it, Karen?
Would you please?
Okay, so I make a motion to adopt resolution 2016, authorizing an application for a business Oregon loan for the new administrative building.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, new business, adopting an educational assistance program, page 57.
Actually, like I said, we seem to have jumped the consent. Oh, no, that was the consent calendar. I don't think we approved the consent calendar. Oh, no, we did. Sorry.
We did.
That was that would have been 2015. Good.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay.
Please carry on.
It's okay.
My apologies.
Thank you. Page 57.
And Mark, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. Historically, we've given educational assistance out to some of our employees. As I started researching that, I realized we actually did not have a policy. And by IRS guidelines, if you don't have a policy, that money you give to your employees is taxable. So we do have an employee that's seeking some educational assistance going for her undergrad degree. This limits the amount we're going to give, number one, and it allows us to do it. And it's a qualified plan because it is a plan and it meets all the guidelines of the IRS. So it would be tax-free to our staff.
Great.
Wonderful.
Any questions or comments or motions?
Just, this is Gil, just a question. So how long has this been a policy of the port? It's gone on forever, but it just didn't have, you didn't have a written policy to support providing education assistance.
Yeah, I cannot answer how long it's been going on because I just don't know that. But I just know that we haven't had a written policy.
Okay, and then one more question: how many of the employees take advantage of this on, let's say, an annual basis? Just at one or two, or is it
If it 0 to 1,
zero?
maybe on the outside.
0.5, 0.7? Okay.
You know, Gil, I think one thing that we probably, it's not something, quite frankly, that the port has promoted very highly. Although, you know, I have kind of a little bit this year and saying, you know, there are some funds that we put aside along with HR resources, you know, every year. And people just didn't know about it, you know. So I think it's a matter of how much we promote and want people to get better in what they do, and a lot of those things will be related to their jobs, and it's written on the policy for that fact. And we had that in the previous port where I work, and people don't take advantage of it. You know, there are a few people here and there that may take, say, a 1 week course, or that really help boost their career with the port, or they may take community college classes that again helps with that, and things like that. That's typically, and the amount is not that high that even if we had, 3, 4, 5 people a year wanting to do it, it would be within the budget.
Okay, yes, thanks for that explanation, and yeah, I think it's a good policy, so thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone want to make a motion for that?
Sure. Is this 2020-17?
Correct.
Okay. I move we adopt a resolution 2020-17, adopting an education assistant policy as written in the meeting packet.
Thank you. Second?
Second it. Kelly got it.
Kelly won.
Kelly won.
It was the loudest.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, page 63, Rondi's gear storage lease.
Yeah, I suppose I could have just put that on the consent calendar, because quite frankly, it's a pretty straightforward thing. I think there was just a mistake here when we put this gear lease together, that we did not put a holdover provision. And this is a lease from Ronda's to the port for the area where we keep all the gear there. As you recall, the port has budget to pave the area near the port maintenance building there. And we are looking, as a matter of fact, we should have that going here pretty quickly. I think Dawn is just looking for additional bids at this point. I would say in the next couple months, that place should be already paid, and then we can terminate the lease around this at the time. Obviously, we don't want to do that when there's a whole bunch of gear there, so we don't have to do the work twice. So we'll wait for those. It's not that high, the cost of the rent, but it may take create more work for staff to have to move it twice. So at this point, we're probably looking in the next 2-3 months to terminate that. But meanwhile, I just want to add that holdover provision, not only so we can move forward and have 2-3 more months of the lease, but quite frankly, to be able to go backwards where we made the mistake and pay Ronda's for the back payment, because since the lease terminated, we had no rights to make payments to anyone for a lease we didn't have. So we're correcting that. So apologize for the oversight, but it's sort of a correction.
Okay, we need a movement for that resolution.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. So a motion to adopt resolution 2020-18, is that right? Authorizing a lease amendment with Rondi's Inc.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Jeff?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, page 67, proposals for South Beach Electric Load Centers.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have Aaron talk about that one.
Sure, thank you. So we, as soon as we got out of last meeting, I put out an RFP to have all the load centers done down at South Beach. We had interest from 3 contractors. 2 of them made the pre-bid. 1 of them didn't make the meeting, but submitted a proposal nonetheless. One of the 3 elected not to bid or not to propose on this project, partially due to their schedule and their availability, and also partially because of a couple of points that I mentioned there in the detail, which has to do with the GFI code changes that are required. There's nothing we can do about that. We're going to have to implement this, but it's going to make operations of the facility. It's going to be a challenge for us. It will absolutely make things safer. It'll protect people and our assets a lot more thoroughly than the old way. But we're going to need to add GFI devices in the new load centers. They have to be someplace along the line in the power supply to marinas. That's a code change that's coming out this year. It hasn't been implemented yet in the Oregon revised statutes, but it's been a change from the National Electric code for I think at least a year or so. So in any case, like I said, this is going to be something we're going to have to go to. The best proposal after evaluating it, we found that the best proposal came from Western States Electrical Construction, and it was the most thorough and included strong statements about being able to complete the project timeline. We also, within this recommendation here, I recommend that we go with the 316 stainless, which is the higher grade stainless. It's of the type that you see in like your pots and pans, the really shiny stuff that doesn't corrode very easily. And anytime we can do that on the coast, I think it's absolutely a good thing. So I recommend a motion to authorize the GM to enter into a contract with Western States Electrical Construction in amount not to exceed $667,583. Be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Yeah, Aaron, so we're gonna have to put the GFIs in before we put the new load centers in, correct?
They will be part of the load center. It'll be included in there.
Right. My only suggestion, make sure that we get something up to the users so they know that it's not the new one's breaking already.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that because that's, and we're going to deal with this in the commercial marina as well, but people's surprise when they think their boat's completely fine and then they plug into a GFI protected circuit and it trips. A lot of time their knee-jerk reaction is that, oh, there's something wrong with the device that I plugged into, which is possible, but the vast majority of the times the device is operating just as it was intended to, which is to stop power when it detects a ground fault. So it's definitely a large outreach effort that I think we need to make across the board. We should probably start talking about that in media and everywhere else as much as we can. We will definitely be responsive to customers who call and say, hey, we've got a problem down here. We'll be as responsive as possible, but it's going to be a challenge for us because the way that looks, I'm sure most people are familiar with this from like, say, the outlets that you have in your restaurants or in your kitchen where it has that little red and black button on it. The analogy here is that rather than having that GFI device in that outlet, you'll have it in your breaker box instead. So, or further back to where it eliminates numerous outlets if it trips, and then we've got to go down and we've got to figure out which one it is. We've talked a little bit this week about some other potential solutions to that. It is possible for us to still go through all the pedestals and possibly address it at the outlets down there, but we're not for sure yet because we need to go through some of those pedestals and see if they're even capable of handling it because they are quite old. So.
And if I may add, Walter, you talk about, you sent me some information about the existence of a previous outreach committee, that help, sometimes make decisions or sometimes create input on things that happen there at the recreational marina. And I think it's actually a really good idea. I'm familiar with that from my previous sport, working with committees for both marina and airports. So it helps, when people are involved with projects versus being told they have to do this or that later. And I did talk to the department heads this past week about considering something like that, and we're probably going to be reaching out to some folks and maybe creating that committee. And this is probably a good time to do so because we could essentially have a committee that will at least hear enough about what we're doing here to be able to educate other folks that they deal with on a regular basis. So
No, thanks for that, Paul. And like the stuff I sent you, that was probably one of the more controversial things we did here many years ago, was taking all the dock boxes off and making sure that the docks were cleared. And that was a big thing in the changing the rules on them, the code enforcement. So that was big, and I appreciate it.
yeah, but it definitely makes a difference when people, again, they're part of the project as moving forward instead of trying to throw it on them. So it is something we probably should do it. It's a way to put the word out as well. As Aaron indicated, I think we really gonna need to get everyone on board of why we're doing this, because I think the first thing we're gonna get is people complaining. But they have to understand is actually for the safety of everybody. If they start having power issues, it's because one of their boats are probably having issues and could catch on fire. So why not? Unfortunately, it affects others too, but it is what it is.
I have a question for Aaron. Aaron, if we're able to put the GFIs on the pedestals, then would that be a change order and potentially exceed that number, or is it too early to tell?
Well, so that was a late idea that I just started really chewing on a little bit with Chris. I think after Monday, it occurred to me as I was talking to Paula during our Monday meeting. I didn't envision that as part of this contract. What I pictured was to go ahead and do this project as it's designed, and if we then can later on, or sometime over the summer or next year or something like that, work on the outlets themselves, that would be a different project. It would be expensive because there's a lot of outlets down there, and so I really don't know what that would look like yet. That's just something I started thinking about, and it's either that or we could put them on there's panels on the docks in South Beach. We have panels down on the docks where there exist zones. It's divided up into zones, and so if you were to do it down there, it would probably be cheaper. And when you trip a GFI, it wouldn't just affect that singular outlet. It would be a handful of them, right, instead of one.
Less of a wild goose chase than on the load center itself.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, and Jim, it relates to your question. So, I read this paragraph that it started to generate questions, because you said this is going to pose significant challenge. You used the word significant. So I was wondering what that means. How significant and how costly, which leads to this question, right? Then is it better than, if it's going to be a significant problem, to address this by installing new pedestals? So what's your scenario as these get up and running, and how many boats do you think will have, or do you not know? Are you saying you really don't know and you're just going to have to play it by ear, or you know that you guys are going to be running down there and dealing with this quite a bit?
I have a strong suspicion, having worked around boats for a very long time now, that a lot of boats have, especially someplace where they're not regularly tested strongly by a GFI, where you're scrutinized carefully, where, like, let's say the pedestal that you plug into every day is GFI protected. All of a sudden you wind up, plugging in one day and it trips. Well, you just found out you had a problem. But if you haven't plugged into a GFI protected circuit for 15 years, you might, I would say that there's probably some boats that are going to run into some problems. So what I mean to say is that we will probably have some boats with problems, but that's not really the crux of the issue. Why I say it's significant is that it only takes, right now, as this system would be set up, it would take only one boat on that whole dock to have a problem to make that device trip for the entire dock. So that's why that I say it's a significant challenge, because if that winds up coming to pass, the way it'll look for us is that, you know, say 4:30 or something like that, or let's say it happens at 6 o'clock in the evening, somebody trips the GFI circuit on dock A, all of dock A is going to lose power. So if that's 6 o'clock, that's going to be after regular hours. How are we going to respond to that? Or if it happens during regular hours, how are we going to respond to that? We got a lot of new personnel. We do have, there are, you know, there are devices that we can have electricians make that can make you can do a very quick test of each pedestal. And it'll give you an error light if that's the pedestal or if that pedestal is working properly, it'll give you a good light. So we can test the pedestals very, you know, relatively quickly, but it's how do you respond to the entire dock being out and then find the one boat in there that caused the problem that made the entire dock go out. That's why I say it's a bit of a challenge. If I have a choice, I'd say the solution to that is that in the interim time period here, what I intend to do is to work on looking at those panels on the docks. Because like I said, that if we get the GFI protection put in the panels themselves, then each dock is going to be divided into zones, and that's going to consist of a handful of zones per dock, so several pedestals per zone. It's a lot easier to troubleshoot 2 or 3 pedestals than it is to do the entire dock. Or, you know, we look at the cost of doing all of the outlets in the pedestals and figure out an answer to that question. So those are the things that I was going to work on in the interim here.
Okay, all right, so you're gonna work on this in the interim. But I didn't know if you're just gonna wait and see how much of a problem it turns into in the end, or go forward with the adjustments that you think you're gonna make recommendations back to us on. In terms of the, you know, in terms of these GFI devices being more centrally located.
Yeah, I would recommend we go ahead and do the project, and in between now and the time that the project is done, I will have run down a couple of these other possible solutions, and we should be able to find one that's going to work for us. I think putting the GFI devices in the panels is probably going to be the most cost-effective, the best balance of all the solutions.
We'll hear more about this in the coming months. All right, thanks. Thanks for that explanation.
Kelly, did you have a question?
I did. I just was gonna say, so what about liability? Somebody's stripping these GFI, the electrical, who's gonna blame who that something I mean, that it caused damage on their boat, or, I mean, you start tripping the GFIs and they lose power, and then who's the liability going to go to? Are they going to try to come after the port because they lost something on, you know, maybe they have cold storage, maybe they have freezer, I mean, stuff for their trips, or where's the liability going to go is all I'm concerned about.
You know, I don't, anybody could always make any claim that they want. Whether or not it's going to stick, I think is the real question. We have to comply with code, so it's not an option for us to be able to say, you know, well, we're not going to do this. Refrigeration, I suppose, you know, there's always a possibility of that. I think you mentioned refrigeration. I think maybe that's about the most likely scenario. I think the other one that comes up with a lot of people is they say, well, what happens if the power's out and my bilge pumps don't work? The easy answer to that is it's illegal to pump your bilges inside of 3 nautical miles. It's against federal law. So anybody who's pumping bilges in the marina is doing something they're not supposed to be doing. And if that's what's keeping the boat afloat, they're not supposed to be doing that. Now, I, again, been around marinas for a long time, and so I know what happens in them. And I know there are people that rely on that sometimes, and we do our best to, you know, watch out for that. But, you know, I'm not a risk assessment specialist as far as liability goes. I can only say that we have to comply with the code. We have to do that. So.
Talking on the dock 5, when we redo the pedestals over there, the GFIs are going over Because you have some big boats that are loaded. And it may, I mean, so that's gonna be interesting to see, how those those pedestals pulled up to some of those big boats. I mean, so many boats plugged into one, so.
We have a better scenario, I think, in Port Dock 5. The GFI devices will be able to be, because we're replacing all the pedestals. So the
Right,
pedestals themselves will be GFI protected. So we don't have to pull it further out into zones on Port Dock 5. And, the pedestals and the infrastructure itself the infrastructure is being upgraded to the point where we're going to give them 50 amp and 3 phases. So I think we're going to be really well taken care of over there once that's done. The problem in South Beach is the wires that feed the pedestals, the whole kit and caboodle needs to be replaced. We need new pedestals in South Beach for sure. But to do that, the way that the lines are run in South Beach, they are affixed to the bottom side of the floats. And so we're about at the point where we have to replace the floats, to replace the lines, to replace the pedestals. I wish I had a better solution than that, because it's really not ideal, but it's not a very ideal situation either. So
thanks, Aaron, that was a whole lot.
And all I have to add on to that is that's why communication is so important. That's why we need to really get everyone on board knowing what could happen, and make sure people have their boats checked, for electrical issues, and knowing that they could be the causer of that. And as Aaron mentioned, we are meeting requirements that we have no choice here. So as long as we get that communication, people will know what could happen and why we're doing, and not point fingers. So
Perfect, thanks, Paula.
Yeah, I just, Paula, the safety issue and the communication on that. So I'm trying to think of, so what's the final policy here? They plug in, they haven't checked their boat, they're the problem. They can't run the plug, it won't work now with the GIF, with it clicking off. And what do they do to get power? As Kelly was saying, do they have a generator? They have to run a generator instead on board the boat? Are they allowed to do that at the dock? Or is it their responsibility because they didn't get the boat checked ahead of time before this new policy came into effect?
I think both of those answers is yes. They could rig up some other means of power as long as they don't plug that into our infrastructure. I just happen to think too, it clearly states on our mooring license agreement that we do not guarantee power. And we are not liable for any power outages. I mean, that's actually stated in our facilities code as well. So we should be double protected there, both in the facilities code and on the mooring license agreement that they each sign. So if they wanted to get power, they could run a generator if they really, or they would run their boat, just light the boat off. Yeah, I think it's as Paula said, we communicate with folks. These are the things that people are going to that they will bring forward though, and we just got to be prepared with that. Like I said, people can make any claim that they want, whether or not it sticks is really the.
But of course, knowing that this may happen, I think we're just going to have to create a pretty good response, especially in the beginning, until we figure out how that works and how people and until people understand how it works. So that way, at least the people that are not in fault with that fault shouldn't have to sit around waiting, for their power. So we'll try to create a good response to, which is reasonable for our staff to attend to, as well as reasonable for people to have to wait for power.
It's the after hours scenarios that I think are the hardest, because the port does not pay anybody to be on call overnight for anything. And we don't have positions that are intended to, that are available to answer. We find a way to make it work overnight or at 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday or on Saturday. But That's
Usually
the thing that's gonna be hard. What's that?
Usually it's you running over there and they,
Yeah,
Salaried employee.
but right. I'm exempt. You're non-exempt or whatever. But it's I'm sometimes not the best person to be getting down there and digging into breakers and stuff. But anyway, it's gonna be a challenge.
we're just gonna have to work something.
We can stay ahead of it.
Hey, Paul, the only thing I would say, just make sure a lot of that stuff should be covered on our MLAs. Just get with Pete.
Absolutely. And I think already does, as Aaron indicated. So people just got to understand it is there. Often what I learn with a lot of complaints is people don't read their stuff. One thing we learned actually very recently is that oftentimes in the past, people didn't even get a copy of their MLA or a copy of the port's information, and we're telling them that you gotta follow this, but we're not telling what this is. So one thing that we just changed recently is making sure that every time somebody entered into an MLA with the port, that they get a copy with everything that is subject to that MLA. That way, if they don't read well, then bad for them, but the reality is we provide it and we have them sign something that they received it. So that is just something we recently are, starting to incorporate because it just wasn't the case in the past.
Okay, we're ready to go on to staff reports.
I move
Oh,
that we authorize the GM to enter into a contract with Western States Electrical Construction in an amount not to exceed $667,583.
second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Paula. A lot of this we covered.
I need my glasses here so I can read. Okay, so as you heard us talking about the finance reports, we actually, in spite of COVID and everything that went on this year, we're actually doing quite well. I think the port is doing good, and I think I added here towards the back, but one of the things that we're working towards is with the other ports and Business Oregon and our federal relations in DC is to make sure whatever deals they put out there for COVID relief, that ports get included, because there are a lot of things that we just don't know yet, and we want to make sure that as things keep shut down and things get worse here in the next 3, 4, 5 months until this whole vaccine is figured out, that if needed, we have a way to, if we start losing mortgage holders or tenants or whatever, that we have ways to recoup some of those funds. Right now, we have been going through the special districts that got some money from the state and wasn't necessarily specifically assigned to the port, but they provided some to the port, and that is running out here at the end of the month. So we don't know what's going to be happening after that. And most of you already know that the commercial marina is getting ready for crab season, and there are pots everywhere, way more than I remember from last year for sure. So that's good. Hopefully it will be a good crab season for everyone, although I understand this week is a bit stormy, so I don't know how much you guys are going to be able to get out there and do what they need to do. We talk about the load centers, and that's been approved. Aaron continue working with the engineer out at Port Dock 5 and Port Dock 3 for the replacement of the panels there. At this point, it's a design phase. As I mentioned, we are looking into doing the actual work by next budget season. and we'll make sure we do so. I think the big one right now is Port Dock 5 and trying to get the pier replaced this year. As you may have read through here, there's been a lot of back and forth between engineer, project manager, EDA, and so on and so forth, trying to get all this. We also brought along the Corps as well as ODFW and letting them know that we're going through this process and there's a chance that we may not get this project through within the in-water work, what they can do for us. My understanding is that a couple weeks extension shouldn't be a problem, but getting into March, it's a bit more of a problem with ODFW. But they don't really want to give an answer now until we go through with the contractors and get a plan with the contractors, because if we can make it happen, if we can get it done, that's their preference. So understandable. So obviously we're going through that right now. We're choosing a contractor here after the 17th. That's the deadline for that project. With that said, we need a few days to go through everything, evaluate, and we have the HDR helping us with that along with the engineer. So that may take a little bit of time. So most likely we're going to be coming to you. As a matter of fact, I would like to set something right now already and trying to schedule a special meeting for, we talk about is it the 27, 28?
It's, we were looking at that Tuesday after Christmas, which is the either the 28th or the 29th was my suggestion.
28, I think is the date we'll talk about it. So that would give us enough time to go through everything, but it won't be too late where it keeps delaying us even more. I know some contractors even ask us to delay the selection by 1 week. We're like, 1 week will make a huge difference for us at this point. Anything will make a big difference. So we decided not to do, because it seems like there's enough. There's actually a good selection of people. I think there were about 10 companies, Aaron, that seem to come to the meeting.
Yeah, I don't have the bid or the sign-in sheet with me. I don't think it was quite 10. I think we were closer to around 6 or 7, something like that.
Oh, okay. For some reason I thought maybe it was about 10 people, because there were a couple people from the same company. But anyway, yeah, so this is actually really good, considering this is like we're just around the corner from getting this thing done. In the past, my experience is that you try to do this in-water work this closely, and if you're lucky, you may get 1 or 2 companies, and so to have this many people still interested, it's good. That's good. And not only that, but it creates competition, so people don't rack up the price, although they may do anyway because of the timeline. We'll see. We made it clear that this project is not to exceed 2.4 million, because not only that, but EDA required that we put the amount on it anyway. So hopefully we'll come under that. And we will try our best to get this within the time frame that we are scheduled for, and we'll keep you informed. But if it's okay with you, if you guys can make it on the 28th, maybe a noon meeting, I would like to go ahead and schedule that special meeting for that time. Does that work for everyone?
Works for me.
Works for me.
Wonderful.
Maybe not. I'm not sure right now.
Okay. If for some reason you need a different day, maybe either that Monday or the Tuesday. So, because I know you're probably busy with the crab and all that right now, Jeff. So.
That was something.
I didn't see Gil's response.
Yeah,
Well,
that works for me.
okay, wonderful. So yeah, so that's a very exciting project, and and I really can't say enough, I already said that before, but I cannot say enough on how well Aaron has been working through with this project. He's very detail-oriented. He got some good comments from the EDA and how well this was put together. And, you know, really, really kudos for him for really keeping track of this quite well. We're also about finishing the audit here with Mark and his crew, and we should be bringing something to you by January for the audit to approve it. And we also have started in our budget process, and we should start actually, Mark, I believe we'll be reaching out here to the budget committee, make sure everyone is on board. Whoever is not, we're going to be looking forward to fill any vacancies. I think we already had a vacancy last year, so we'll try to fill that, plus any other, hopefully the same people come back. Yeah, it's very exciting. We should be way ahead of the game because Mark is so organized and on top of things. I'm so lucky. I don't tell these guys what to do. They know what to do. So we have been quite involved here with the Maritime Innovation Center. I don't know if you guys have heard enough about that, but they call it the MEEC. And it's basically a whole bunch of people, including county, city. OSU is very strong and involved on this. College, high school, and then there's some private partners that are also involved in this. And basically what they're trying to do is it's really focused on the blue economy, because we got this big, great ocean right in front of us, and what kind of resources, you know, that we can take advantage of and create opportunities and business that maybe we're lacking over here, but that could use some of new creation. And so they're working with the EDA and other agencies and trying to obtain some grant funds and maybe even constructing a building. And I actually invited Rhonda's to be part of that, because they are already creating something out there for new buildings and so on. So they're very gladly got engaged on that. And maybe in partnership, there's something that could work. I mean, for the international terminal, I want to make sure that we don't completely take the very little amount of land we have to just put into that, because I also really got to focus on the terminal and the cargo side of things. But Rhonda's being right there, I think is good, and it can still be business that support the maritime industry and even our terminal and the fishermen. So it's quite exciting. If any of you ever want to attend to some of these meetings, let me know. I'll be happy to send invitations when I get them. I'm sure Gil probably already know enough about it, because he's still quite involved with OSU, even though he say he's retiring. Retired.
I didn't know as much about about this effort as I normally would since I got retired.
Okay.
I do know they did get funding from EDA, right? So that funding is secured, isn't it? Secured?
I don't know if it's 100% secure, but I think they're still working on. I don't think it's in paper yet, but I think
Okay.
the idea is there. I could be wrong. So
this is something I think it would be good to talk to the board about this as this develops. And I would be willing to go to a meeting so I can figure out. One question geographically, what's the geographic extent of this? Is it just at the county level, or does it extend to the entire coast?
No, I think the intent is to maybe get something going here in Newport, but the concept is that it would benefit the entire coast. As a matter of fact, there's already some companies all the way from Tillamook that are involved with this that are excited about the concept, because I think it would involve it would benefit overall. And I think there are even some of the, well, and because the county is involved too, there's that. And even some folks from Corvallis are involved with that, because it can expand, but the intent is obviously with the blue economy thing is to stay on the coast. So we'll see. I think what I would like to do, maybe we can do a work session eventually and bring in a presentation as we get more settled with this, and so you all can ask all the questions you want, and you can realize how much you want the port to be involved. I think it is something right up our alley, in terms of being involved, because the ports usually are quite involved in economic opportunity, especially that involves maritime stuff. So I think it's great. And I'll talk to them and see if we can come up with a date and let you know and see if that's something you want to proceed with.
And I might just finally note that it's not just the coast. There's discussions on this Blue Economy Initiative, including Portland and Portland State and all the upriver ports on the Columbia.
Mhm.
So I don't know how far this could go, but I know
Right.
those have been part of the discussions at Oregon State University.
Right. I think it's starting mostly over here. Like I said, there are people, even Corvallis and some other counties that are kind of getting involved. Again, the concept, because it's blue economy, it's involved with the maritime world, but the maritime world, as you mentioned, it runs all the way to Portland. So that can be anything. So we'll see. I'm still learning about this myself and trying to figure out how much we get involved. But at this point, I think they're counting us as one of the partners, and I think we should be.
So one quick last question, Paula. Who's the point person on this?
The people that are mostly running this is Rachel Maddox. She is Madoc. She is actually the same people that are working on grants for us.
Yeah.
And then Mark Farley with OSU. The two of them are the ones really running with it.
Rachel and Mark. Okay. That's
Mhm.
interesting. Thanks.
Yeah. And what else we have here? Probably should talk a bit about the PAC Wave project. So as you may know, OSU put out an RFP out there to find contractors that would be interested in the project of moving cables and whatever for their wave project. And so there have been some companies that contact us because pretty much anyone that would do this project would have to utilize our terminal for the most part. And so we've been providing a lot of information to these folks and trying to figure out how this would work. In many occasions, we always make sure that they are talking to the longshore as well, and they have, which is good. So they've been negotiating because we don't know who's going to win this, but I think they're closing sometime in January. But the project itself, I believe it's not supposed to really start until sometime in the summer of 2022. But at that point, once they start going, there may be some more permanent need for the terminal. And those are things that we'll find out better, once we know who the winner is. And definitely some utilization of some of our upland as well, but not much. It's probably surrounding around 1 acre of our property. So we've been pretty much giving them pricing and trying to let them know how things could work with us. At this point, everything is just like, if should they win, and this is what the expectations are type thing. We'll keep you posted as we know more. I don't know if you have any questions about this. At one point, there was some online information, some sort of Zoom meeting kind of thing, where the midwater trawlers was invited to, and they participated, so they understand it, how that could or not affect the fishermen at the terminal. And from my understanding, it really won't affect them much at all. Other than that, I did meet with Senator-elect Dick Anderson, as I mentioned, and also we had a separate meeting with Representative Goldberg and then Dick Anderson again with some of the other coastal ports, just to kind of give a background on coastal ports. I had a really good meeting with Dick Anderson. I think it will be great working with him. He understands ports, and I think I look forward to working with him, really. And beyond that, on the legislative side of things, on the federal level, the water bill apparently, I haven't really gotten anything out on the Senate side, but it was approved on the House, and I don't remember seeing anything about the Senate. I know it was going to the Senate for final approval, and they believe it was going to get approved. Other than that, I've just had a meeting with the chamber right before this meeting. As you know, the Seafood and Wine Festival is going to be way smaller this time around. They just literally doing boxes and stuff and use just a small portion of our property for parking. This year, I went ahead and waived their fee for permit. It wasn't much to start with, but I figure the chamber can really use some help because a lot of people have drop off because they can't pay the chamber. And, we still need their good work. They're doing this mostly to bring people to Newport still, and it's not like they're really making money. And finally, I just want to, again, say thank you to Fred Howard, our maintenance employee at South Beach that spent 15 years of his life working for us, but decided to retire this past week. Friday was his last day. And really, I'm very thankful for all the good work he has done. And barring any questions, that's my report. And if you have anything else that it's from Aaron's or Mark that I haven't mentioned by any means, feel free to ask questions as well.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Anyone have any questions or comments for Paula? None heard. Commissioner reports. Anything to report? Jeff has something.
I'll just say a quick thanks to Paula, staff, everybody. We can see from the reports, there's a lot of things going on. They're juggling a lot of projects and some big projects. And in the year of COVID, just thanks to everybody.
I echo that. Thank you. Any comments on calendar? Okay, well, happy holidays, and we'll look to have a meeting on the 28th or 29th, depending on availability.
Okay. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy
Yeah.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank
Merry
you so
Christmas.
much.
Okay, it's
Cheers.
7:21, and we'll adjourn the monthly meeting.